Simulation as an activity is a key part of product thinking, and product thinking applies to many endeavors of business and life, not just when you're building products. Really, the best way I can describe it for folks is if you've watched Avengers Infinity War, in that movie, there is a point at which Doctor Strange basically tries to simulate future possibilities of how the Avengers and humanity's war against Thanos, who wants to basically kill half of all the living beings in the universe, how might it end? Right? So what Doctor Strange does at that moment in the movie is he goes into this kind of almost trance-like state, and his friends, including Iron Man and others, are confused about what Doctor Strange is doing. And so once he's out of that trance, they ask him. And so what Doctor Strange says is, I looked into the future. He has the time stone, so he can do that. I looked into the future and looked at 14,605 possible futures of how this conflict will end. And so then his friends naturally ask him, how many did we win in? Did we win versus Thanos? And he answers one out of those 14,605 possible futures. But that thing Doctor Strange did, it doesn't require any sorcery, and it doesn't require the time stone. We are all capable of doing this, perhaps to different degrees, but we are all capable of doing this, but we don't do it often enough. So what ends up happening, certainly in life and in many business meetings, is that people and teams, they look backward, right? And they look at the present. They have a bunch of data, they have a bunch of context, they have a bunch of research, bunch of information. And then based on all of that, they make a rational decision of what to do. And then they say, okay, now we're going to go ahead and do it. What I've observed is that in this process, many times people skip the step of looking forward and simulating the possible future. And the reality is you're making changes to a system when you make a decision. And the system will often involve people. So you need to ask yourself, as you are making this decision, what is going to happen? What are the different possibilities? And even when people are involved, you cannot think of people as one monolithic entity, which is users. How will customers react? Not only that, they make the mistake of assuming that the customer is like them. I've been fortunate to work with incredibly smart engineers, and not all engineers, but what I'm about to say correlates with some smart engineers, is that many of them assume that every user would react like them, which is like, clearly this is the most logical thing to do, so everybody will be logical, right? But that's not how the world works. So you cannot look at like even users or customers and people as one monolithic entity. You have to think about different segments of users, segments of customers. Maybe your large customers will react differently from your small customers when you make this blog post announcing this policy change. Each segment might have different concerns. Not only that, but if you're a large company, you'll have other external stakeholders, not just customers and users. You'll have the press, you'll have regulators, you'll have social media. So lack of simulation or not giving enough importance to simulation is why companies often make suboptimal decisions, and sometimes they make decisions that then they have to backtrack on because they didn't really spend time thinking through how this will work. To give you a more recent example, like the whole issue with the OpenAI board firing Sam Altman and putting out that message, who knows what actually happened, but at least it is fair to say that not enough time was given to simulation. Because if you had simulated how this might play out, like these are all incredibly smart and intelligent people, then you would perhaps have avoided this issue. Or at least you could have done better messaging around how you would approach it. Now, one last thing I'll say about this is often people claim that all this sounds great, but we want to move fast. And so we can't like really slow down and do simulation, Shreyas. But here's the thing. What you need to understand is that if you build the skill of simulation, which you can only build through practice, once you learn the skill and once you become an expert, process of doing this takes only seconds or minutes in most cases. And in the most difficult cases, in the most complex cases, it takes at most hours. So I don't care how fast you want to move. You can take a few extra seconds, minutes, or just a couple of hours, okay? And the great thing about simulation is it works at the macro scale, major government policy decisions, as an example. But it also works at a very micro scale. So one thing I did for many years is, like, in the morning before I start doing my work, I would look through the meetings that I have for the day, and I would actually simulate those meetings. Like, what is going to occur? What is the other party going to say? Et cetera, et cetera. And it took only 5 minutes to simulate through 5, 6 meetings that I had, but it helped me prepare for those meetings much better. Another example I'll share is when I was at Stripe, I was asked to put together an offsite for an important strategic topic with a small group of 10 to 12 people. It included the founders and a few other product folks and engineers and so on. I wanted to be thoughtful about the offsite because a lot of offsites, you talk a bunch of stuff, but they don't really go anywhere. So I didn't want that to occur with this offsite. What I did is actually simulated many possible outcomes. And okay, what if I change this variable? How might that work in the simulation, right? And then based on simulation, I designed the offsite in a very unique way. And after the half a day of the offsite, a lot of people came to me proactively and said, you know what, something about this offsite, it's the best offsite I've been at. And I've been at like many offsites. In large part, actually, the reason it worked as well is because I had simulated many different kind of alternatives and options and possible futures, and I'd eliminated the ones that would not have an optimal effect. And so that's how I ended up doing it. So it's a very powerful tool. And the only way that you can even use the tool is, first, you recognize the importance of doing it. And second, you commit to practicing it, because that's the only way to get good at it.